Has anyone had a celebrity NSFW encounter? What's your story? Met Gary Busey at an airport in Tulsa. Okay. Through a strange course of conversation in which he insulted nearly everyone. He ended with a joke. Gary. Did you ever hear about the poor family? Me. No. Gary. They were so poor. They had to jerk off the dog to feed the cat. He then chuckled to himself. Grabbed the next taxi. And left us speechless. Friend was eyeing next to Shaq at a club in Miami. Of course he can't keep his eyes on the road. And tried to sneak a peek at Shaq's junk. Shaq turns to him. Smiles and says, crazy right? Big Nia. Friend of ours is a hotel hospitality manager. She was alone in a room with Russell Brand. He very politely offered to have sex with her. She said her husband was waiting downstairs for her. Brand said he could come up too. I was working on a behind the scenes featurette for a movie starring Keanu Reeves and Renée Zellweger. I had to wire the lav under Renee's shirt and clip it to her bra. And I totally accidentally grabbed her boob. He looked me right in the eye and said, "Geez. Buy me a drink, okay?" I live in New York City. We normally ignore celebs, but one time I walked past David Blaine. I shouted, "Do a magic trick." He replied, "Try finding your dick. That's magic too." I walked away in silence. Back in 2003 I worked at the Best Buy in Westwood, UCLA. Store 327. It's no longer there, but we'd get famous people in from time to time. Jessica Alba bought 2 Xboxes from me. Told my manager I was great. Christina Aguilera came in a few times. Anyhow. This was back in my weed smoking prime and basically only CA had incredible strains like OG Kush. One night we're closing up and 2 guys are playing Madden on the store Xbox or PlayStation, and it was Snoop and Method Man. I told them we were closing and they were very friendly and polite. So I said, "Hey guys, I'll be outside in like 10 minutes. If you want. I got some OG Kush if you want to smoke. I have an Oldsmobile Alero. Gold color in the lot." They leave. I walk out and sure enough Snoop and Method Man are parked next to my car. So I got hires with 2 legends and went home. Me and my dad met Rick Astley. I shook his hand. Said big fan. Dad didn't shake his hand, sorry. My hands are sticky. Rick smiles and says my hands are usually sticky too. And grins. I was 18 and on vacation at the Atlantis in the Bahamas. It was at night. And my friend and I were exploring the grounds. A big black limo pulled up near the main entrance and Van Troyer, mini-me, stepped out with a beautiful woman and a few big built bodyguards. My friend and I were like, we gotta get a picture with him. So we asked him politely and he said yes, but only one. So my friend stood on his left and I stood on his right and the bodyguard took the pic. Disposable camera days. While the picture was being taken, Van had his left hand firmly planted on her ass. And the right hand firmly planted on mine. He was pinching so hard. I guess I can't blame him as our asses are level for him. So yeah. TLDR. Mini-me got a copper feel on myself and a friend in the Bahamas. I asked winning a rider out to lunch on an elevator. She said she had to work. You should have offered to take her to a restaurant instead of an elevator. I was in a very massive men's room at a venue taking her. I was about 15 urinals deep and bathroom was completely empty, as far as I could tell, besides me. In walks Jack Black. He walks right up to the urinal next to me. Nothing weird happened. But I always found it bizarre that he didn't space himself out better. That's a man code violation. He probably did it knowing that it was going to leave you with a story. Went to the U2 concert in LA a couple years back and saw Pierce Brosnan walking through the parking lot of the Forum. As I walked by I said Bond. James Bond. He gave me the most revolting look and said I'm wanker. Totally made my day. My sister ran into Matthew McConaughey in a bar years ago. They hit it off. And they went back to her place. She got overwhelmed by nerves and said she had to go run out to her car to get something. She sat in her car freaking out for God knows how long until he eventually gave up and left. Must have baffled the poor guy. He understood. Your sister definitely told you the brother-friendly version of this story. Saw Tim Allen's mistress sprinting out of his trailer after his wife showed up at the set of one of those Santa Claus movies he was filming. Heard German soccer stars Mark Rios and Mario Götze talking about butting 17-year-olds in a restroom of a club in Munich. They didn't see me as I was taking a dump in the stall. I was working in a Nick restaurant and Sean Lennon and Charlotte Kemp Mull came in. Very under the influence of something. They were actually super nice. But as the evening wore on, Charlotte's shirt fell all the way open and her boob was just out for like half an hour. And they didn't seem to notice. Other patrons were staring. Management was having whispered "do we tell her?" conversations. Finally our most gloriously Brooklyn waitress walked over and said "Yo ma. Yeah, tits out." Charlotte politely thanked her and put it away. I was at a Jim Jeffries stand-up show in Dallas. Sure enough, he pounds over 10 beers doing his routine. After the show he's hanging at the bar belligerently drunk. My friend and I head over to say what's up. Before we could say anything, Jim grabs my friend, forcefully bends him over and pretends to him in the ass in front of everyone there. Best night of my friend's life. I have been handed weed by numerous musicians leaving the hotel I worked at. Snoop. Angus Stone. One of the Blink 182 guys. Las Vegas. I'm eating lunch with my mother when I spotted Wayne Brady also eating lunch with his mother. I waited until he finished eating before asking for a photograph. iPhones were still fairly new and my sweet mother had never really used one, so as Wayne Brady and I were posing for the picture my mother kept pressed the home button to take it. I quickly pulled the camera back up and posed again. She pressed the home button again. Once more I opened the camera app and this time Wayne Brady nicely explained that you have to press the button on the screen for the picture. You guessed it. My mother pressed the home button again, so I thought I'd be funny and chime in with "is Wayne Brady gonna have to choke a bitch?" No one laughed. It was Mother's Day. My mom didn't know the reference. Got the picture at least. Wayne Brady was a very nice. I rode in a hotel elevator with Red Sox pitcher Derek Lowe at like 2 in the morning while he was making out with 2 women at the same time. Peter, what would you do if you had $1 million? Not really NSFW, but I was at a hotel in South Africa looking for the bathroom when I got lost and ran into Lawrence Fishburne in a hallway. Pretended like I didn't know who he was and asked if he knew where the bathroom was. Like I probably would have asked anyone. Anyway. He was a very nice guy and walked me to the bathroom where he said, "The men's room is on the left. The women's room is on the right. The choice is yours." I almost died. I worked my way through college as a waiter in a glamorous room in Las Vegas. I became acquainted with Florence Henderson, RIP. And she would ask to sit in my station. One evening she had a guest. Joan Rivers. Me. Henderson had a favorite wine. Peace Porter. That she always ordered. It just so happened that on our wine list, that wine was labeled as number 69. That's how she ordered it. "I'll have a bottle of 69. On this night, I approached the table, introduced myself to Ems Rivers and made the usual small talk. Then I asked, "So Ems Henderson, would you like a little 69 tonight?" OMG. Joan Rivers went completely insane. She started screaming and yelling and demanding security to have me fired and arrested. The whole time, Florence Henderson is trying to calm her down and explain. Long story short, the maitre d' put me in another area and not long after I graduated and left that job. And I never forgot that story. This happened in 1985. Joan Rivers surprises me that she would make such a scene over an inside joke. I thought she had a sense of humor. I went to a pool party in LA around 2002 and there was a guy named Michael Bubble there. I don't think anyone had heard of him at the time. I remember meeting him only because my friend made fun of him when he introduced himself by calling him Michael Googly Moogly, which was a reference to a line in a Snickers commercial. For the rest of the night he was known as Googly Moogly. Later that night, I walked into the bathroom in the guest house and he was taking a "I live in Vancouver. Where he's from?" He asked out my friend's mom before he was famous. She said no. This is actually from a director I worked with. In the 80s. He was hired as a backstage dresser for a Broadway show that had Patti LuPone in it and it was his first show. I don't remember what the show was, but there was a scene where she runs off stage. He was instructed to stand right off stage and hold his hands out at a very specific position, which is common in quick change situations where an actor might have to hand off or literally throw a costume piece to make their change. What actually happened is that his hands were in the perfect position to get 2 handfuls of boob. As she ran off stage she pulled her breasts out so that he would grab them. Apparently she likes pranking new crew members. Breast prank ever. I called Prince Harry when he was hitting on the girl I was seeing and he was plying her with expensive champagne. He said he'd get me a pint. He still owes me that pint and it's been 5 years. A guy walked by me at the airport as I sat waiting to board. And kid you not, farted mere inches from my face. I looked up. It was Bon Jovi. Short by a fart. And you're to blame. You hit me. With methane. I live in Las Vegas and often see celebrities here. One time on summer vacation while in high school in the mid-90s when I was 16 and just got my driver's license. I was at the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace with a friend and there was a crowd outside the Versace store, so we went over to see what was going on. Mike Tyson and his entourage were shopping inside and they locked the doors for him. After a while they all disappeared into the back of the store and we realized from having had a part-time job at the mall they were headed to employee parking behind the store. We ran down the corridor next to the store and headed outside where his crew were loading up Persian rugs and shopping bags into a Range Rover while Iron Mike was putting on a helmet and jumping onto a sport bike. My buddy and I start waving at him and right as he makes eye contact my friend switches from a wave to flipping him off. Mike ripped off the helmet and started shouting obscenities at us while we ran back into the mall ting ourselves. Andy Dick tried to pull me into a bathroom after we did some blow together at a party in Hollywood Hills. I pulled away but he took my best friend who's a total fiend. He never told me what exactly happened. I don't even think the cocaine knew what was happening. Probably not in the same league as other posts. But in late October 2008 I was in the rear stage crowd for a rally starring Joe Biden. And after the rally he was shaking hands with the crowd and when he came to me, this exchange happened. Me. Hey Joe. 4 more days. Buddy. Joe yanked me in close. Joe Biden. Yelling. Yeah, goddamn right. My mom grew up with Rob Lowe as her neighbor. She dated him in middle school and they were apparently found making out in a closet at school one time. She says that he was one of those kissers that uses enough tongue to lick your vocal cords. What the kind of detail is that for your mom to tell you? My mom, rest her soul, was an absolute party animal up till the day she died. Massive lover of rock music and would go to a ton of concerts. Get backstage and we have a load of memorabilia all around the house. Anyway, one band she always disliked was Kiss. And she'd never tell me why not until you're older. Eventually I got old enough for her to tell me why she disliked Kiss. Apparently she made it backstage and as they were going on stage, Gene Simmons came up to her in full makeup, asked her name and after she replied he stated, "I'll be seeing you after the show, Susan." He then unraveled his massive tongue and flicked it a few times as he grabbed her ass. She said out of all the times in her life of being hit on by creepy men, that was the most unsettling. She does however say that had he not been in full costume it would have been a lot less creepy. I was next to the table of Leo DiCaprio at Catch in NY. Saw him get with an 18-year-old IMG model then proceeded to take her home. Saw them leave together like it was nothing. Billy Joe Armstrong, Green Day, told Trecool, their drummer, to suck my dick. Instead he gave me some orange soda. I'm straight. It worked out. Back before they were popular. BJA banged my friend's girlfriend after a show. My friend is still dead. This was like 25 years ago. I rode an elevator with Chuck Norris. I was younger and we were staying at the Sheraton when my cousin and I decided to roam the hotel out of boredom. We got in the elevator and basically went from random floor to floor being nosy. We ended up going to the parking garage, God only knows why, and he jumped in the elevator down there and pressed the penthouse button on the elevator. We just stared in awe at him as we went up. He asked which floor we were going to and we said nothing. He just laughed and continued to ask genuine questions. You kids in for the weekend for a day? Having fun in the city? I remember floor hopping at your age. Well, take care kids. He gave my cousin and I a fist bump each and got off the elevator. For the curious. All my internal organs exploded shortly after. We ended up just going back to our hotel room after that and went straight to bed. Our fragile little minds couldn't take what just happened. Back in the 90s. When Jean-Claude Van Damme was there. A relative was at a Vegas hotel and went down to use the sauna. He was in there shooting with a business partner and in walks Van Damme. He says, if you are who I think you are Major Camp's favorite action star, and Van Damme confirmed and told him to tell me hello from him. Everyone was nude. Not sure if Alexis Texas classifies as celeb, but she did take off her thong and stuff it in my face during one of her strip shows. How is that not safe for work if she was actually working? I walked in on Benny Benassi getting a blowjob in the VIP bathroom of a club in Denver. Did he get satisfaction? When I was around 13, my cousin surprised me and took me to Leonardo DiCaprio's house. My cousin's newlywed husband was very good friends with him. This was around 15 years ago too. When Leo was in his absolute prime. And unbeknownst to him, I was completely and utterly obsessed. I'll never forget sitting on his white leather couch just waiting for him to walk into the room we were all in. And out he came with a trail of smoke behind him. High as a kite with a fat joint in between his fingers. And I mean, he was high AF. I didn't even recognize him due to his scruffy beard and long matted hair. Not really NSFW, but pretty funny that I was expecting him to look like Jack from the Titanic, but he could have passed as the dude. I haven't, but my great aunt did. We're pretty certain she ed Picasso after meeting him repeatedly, with photographs to prove it. His portrait of her looked nice in her living room. I had a friend who met Jason Segel at a bar in LA. She said he was fairly drunk and all over the place with their conversation. At point he just point blank said to her, "So are we gonna have sex?" She said, "No." He responded okay and then just walked away back to his table. Ray Liotta once stared at me while he sensually ate a piece of sushi. Not really NSFW. But I know a dude who danced with Renee Zellweger at a wedding. And dropped her while doing so. Wasn't real safe for her, I guess. NSFW, not safe for wedding. Chuck Berry got me in a hotel room and told me what he planned to do with me. This was back in the 80s and I was stupid and naive as hell. Let's just say I got the hell out of there. Edit. Okay. People. He simply told me he was going to have sex with me. There was no poop. No pee. No bathroom. And no glass table or other furniture involved. I didn't remove any clothing. Nor did he. No attempted RP occurred. And I left. It was boring except for the fact that a rock and roll legend told me he was going to do me. Then I left. The end. David Spade is exactly the asshole you'd expect him to be. He opened for Bobcat Goldthwait and my roommate's best friend was Bobcat's brother. I got to go backstage after the show and we were sitting in a circle with Bob's brother and there was another group of people just standing off to the side. Bob came out of the shower and sat down next to me and started talking. Genuinely a good guy. Spent 20 minutes talking with him. One of the people standing off to the side was a girl on crutches. I felt bad so I suggested that they pull up a chair and join us. To help her I got up and pulled a chair over for her. I turned around and Spade took my seat. Flipped me the bird and told me to off. The day he got tased by his bodyguard was a glorious one. I used to work at Quiznos in the early 2000s. PRN star Peter North came in and ordered a sandwich. I giggled when he asked for an extra squirt of ranch dressing on it. I was working in a spa a few years back. I was walking through the men's changing room and as I went past the steam room, Jason Alexander walked out completely naked. Needless to say, that is the most famous penis I've ever seen in real life. Ezekiel Elliott told me to go myself. Channing Tatum drunkenly hitting on a really pregnant woman in an elevator during RSDCC 2010/11. While my equally drunk friend kept trying to talk to him about how tight G.I. Joe was. Not me. But my friend puked on Shawn Mendes at a party. He was pretty cool about it. I have a friend who has been working in TV production for many years now. He slept with Felicia Day at an after party and they were friends with benefits for a while. I was working at a nice bar restaurant in Beverly Hills a few years ago. Rachel McAdams walks in and orders a martini. I pretended I didn't know who she was and there were only a few people at the bar, so I talked to her for a few minutes. Just basic chit chat. Then this guy comes in and sits next to her. Turns out they're dating. They go get dinner together. Have a few drinks. When it's over, she walks past the bar, smiles at me, and says, "Good night." Then she went home and probably ate that guy she was dating. It was wild. Unfortunately, this was not me, but a very close friend of mine had this encounter while I was waiting in the car. Another friend was turning 21 and we had some scheme planned to hang lubed sex toys from the ceiling of his house in the hopes that somebody would bump into one at the party later. So my friend goes into the store and picks out a variety of things and a couple things of lube and gets in line. While he was waiting in line, a man got in line behind him. He did a kind of half turn to see who the person behind him was. Sure enough, it was Matthew McConaughey. He said McConaughey looked at him, looked down to see the lube and dildos, then looked back at his face and said his usual right. Those were the only words spoken and my buddy says it was one of the greatest moments of his life.